Hello, this is Stefan again from schristoph.online. Today we'll talk about my latest blog post, the start of a 4-part series on AWS's Prescriptive Guidance paper for Model Context Protocol strategies. This first part is the map of the whole guide, 3 pillars, a build versus buy ladder, and the numbers worth quoting. Let's dig in. First, the container AWS Prescriptive Guidance is expert-written material in 3 tiers: strategies for executives, guides for architects, and patterns with runnable code for builders. The MCP paper sits in the guide tier. It tells you how to think, but stops short of click-by-click code, and that gap is exactly what the rest of the series fills. This diagram is the shape of the whole guide in one picture. Naive tool scaling breaks. MCP answers part of that problem, but the guide is candid that MCP is necessary, not sufficient. What you combine it with are the 3 pillars on the right: tool design, hosting, and governance. The guide opens by naming why naive scaling breaks. First, duplication without governance. Every team rebuilds the same integration, so you pay n times and have no central place to enforce security. Second, context window pressure. Every tool definition is sent on every model call, competing with the prompt and history until the model degrades. Now, you might ask yourself, can't the model just load tools when it needs them instead of paying for all of them every call? In the standard MCP flow, no, the client ships the full tool list on each invocation, so the definitions are recurring tags. The mitigation the guide points to is a gateway with semantic tool search, which presents a scoped-down toolset instead of every definition. Once you've chosen MCP, the guide gives a build versus buy ladder that pushes back on the instinct to build. Rung 1. Use a pre-built server first, many already exist, and AWS ships its own managed one. Rung 2. Enhance an existing server. Rung 3. Build custom only when you genuinely must. Most teams should start at rung 1. A critical reader will push back. Isn't buy before build naive, given the supply chain risk of running someone else's server? Fair. The ladder is about not rebuilding soft integrations, not about skipping due diligence. A pre-built server still has to come from a private scanned registry, and you still own the trust of whatever you register. Buy lowers duplication cost, it does not lower your obligation to vet. The 3 pillars, each in a line. Tool design is the most prescriptive. Keep parameters to 8 or fewer. Bundle any workflow needing 3 or more calls into one tool. Split a server past 50 tools. And remember, each definition costs 250 to 500 tokens on every call. Hosting walks the spectrum from local to remote to a managed gateway. Governance is anchored on token isolation. And here's the primary source itself: the AWS Prescriptive Guidance paper, Model Context Protocol Strategies on AWS, published in March 2026. Everything in this post is my reading of this document. The introduction you're looking at lays out the 3-pillar framing that the whole guide and this series is built on. I didn't want to read the guide in isolation, so I mapped it against what the independent security community documents: prompt injection, tool poisoning, confused deputy, exfiltration, and chain of trust abuse. The guide is strong on confused deputy through token isolation, partial on tool poisoning, and only oblique on prompt injection. It's a design and governance strategy, not a full security playbook. That headline aligns directly with the MCP specification itself here. The spec requires servers to validate that a token was issued specifically for them and explicitly forbids token pass-through. So the guide's token isolation model isn't an AWS invention, it's a textbook mitigation of what the protocol's own authors flag as a security consideration. The guide cites a 28 to 32% task accuracy improvement and a roughly 3-fold gain from structured wrappers. The caveat matters: these come from external research papers, not an AWS-controlled benchmark, so I quote them as cited research, not a guarantee. The numbers I trust without qualification are the structural ones, because they're design rules, not performance claims. The sharpest fair objection here: am I just laundering unverified marketing numbers by repeating them? I don't know the experimental setup behind those percentages, so I treat them as directional, not as something I'd put in a customer service level agreement. If you take one thing from this post, take the structural rules, not the percentages. And the question the post is lighter on: when is MCP the wrong choice? Honestly, when you have a single agent talking to one or two stable APIs with no governance need, or a throwaway prototype, or no capacity to run and patch a server. MCP earns its overhead when you have multiple agents, multiple consumers, real governance, or proprietary capabilities to expose below that bar. A direct call is simpler and safer. This was the map. The next 3 posts are the territory, each with code you can run. Tool design in code, hosting from local to AWS, and governance in code. If you're advising a team on agentic AI, the build versus buy ladder and the token isolation story are the 2 things I'd put in front of them first. One more source worth your time. Anthropic's own engineering guidance on writing effective tools for agents. Here, it independently argues that loading every tool definition up front is wasteful and degrades performance, which is the same context text point the AWS guide quantifies. The 2 reinforce each other rather than contradict. Thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. If so, you can reach out on LinkedIn directly to get in touch with me or head to my blog at schristoph.online. Let's keep in touch. Take care.